Hello and welcome to a video on solving by square rooting and then solving using the quadratic formula. So those are our two goals today, plus we are also going to solve some real world problems. So remember, solutions of a quadratic are the same as the x-intercepts. Okay, so we're going to be looking for the x-intercepts or the solutions to all of these examples. So first off, we're going to solve by square rooting. It is best when you have an equation in standard form with no b term, aka no x term, or if you have an equation in vertex form. And so to the right, we've got the sides for square rooting. So first you're going to isolate the squared term, square root both sides, do not forget plus or minus, because when you square root, there'll be a plus or minus, and then finish solving if necessary. So this equation is good for solving by square rooting because I have no x term. I don't have an x right here. So like an equation, I'm going to do the opposite to both sides, add 9, add 9. Negative 4 plus 9 will be a 5, equals, drop down 5x squared. Keep solving as if this is a one-step equation, divide by 5, divide by 5. So x squared is equal to a 1. Okay, so now I need to square root both sides because the opposite of a squared is a square root. So I'm going to square root, okay? The squared and the square root cancel each other out, leaving you with an x. And then the square root of a 1 is a 1, because 1 times 1 is 1. So the answer is plus or minus 1. So anytime you're square rooting, you will put the plus or minus 1 symbol. So all that means is x is equal to a positive 1 and x is equal to a negative 1. So I've got those two solutions to your problem. Let's try some more. Okay. On A, again, I have something with no x term, so this is good for square rooting. All right. To get x by itself, we're going to subtract 3 on both sides. Negative 24 on the right would equal 4x squared. Divide by 4, divide by 4. X squared equals a negative 6. Okay, so now that my squared term is isolated, I'm going to square root both sides to cancel it out. The squared and squared cancel out, leaving you with an x. Now, square root of negative 6, we can actually not do that. It's impossible. So this will be called no real solutions. So if you try and type in negative square root of x in the calculator, it will say error or something like no real solutions. So you cannot square root a negative number. Back to our last class, this means on a graph, it is hitting somewhere not on the x-axis because there's no real solutions. All right, moving on. I've got two equations in vertex form for b and c. And so let's solve by taking the square root. First off, we're going to subtract a 1 on both sides. That'll leave us with 32 equals 2x minus 1 squared. Now I need to get rid of the 2. Parentheses mean multiply, so I'm going to divide by 2, divide by 2. Half of 32 is 16. Drop down, parentheses, x minus 1 squared. So I've isolated my squared term. So now if I've got parentheses, I need to square root both sides. So I'm going to square root and square root. The squared and the square root cancel out, leaving you just under the square root x minus 1. Equals plus or minus. The square root of 16 is a 4, since 16 is a perfect square, so plus or minus a 4. Okay, so I'm going to do two separate problems to figure out my answer. The first one is x minus 1 equals a positive 4. The second one is x minus 1 equals a negative 4, because I have to check the positive 4 and the negative 4. So I'm going to solve two equations, plus 1 on both sides. So x equals a 5, plus 1 on both sides. X equals negative 3. So those are my two answers by square rooting. All right, let's try one more. On C, I've got a number out here, 4, and a 40 that look alike. So we're going to subtract 4 on both sides. Drop down 3, x plus 2 squared equals 36. And you should divide by the number in front of the parenthesis 3. So divide by 3, divide by 3. 36 divided by 3 is 12. Will equal x plus 2 squared. So I've isolated my parentheses, my squared term. So to get rid of the squared, I will square root both sides. Squared and the square root cancel out, leaving you with x plus 2 under the parenthesis equals. Now when you plus or minus, or when you square root, you need a plus or minus. 12 is not perfect. It is some decimal. So if you square root 12, you get a decimal. So we're going to keep it if it's not perfect, but put a plus or minus with it. Okay? Lastly, I need to check my two solutions. So how to get x by itself, I would need to add or subtract 2 from both sides and cancel it out. I'm going to write this, but I'm going to write it backwards. So I'm going to write minus 2 first, then the plus or minus, and then square root of a 12. Okay? You can leave your answer like that because it is simplified. Or if you want to split up your answers, you can do that. Don't have to. One answer is negative 2 plus, the square root of 12. And the other answer would be negative 2 minus the square root of 12. Okay? So again, you can leave it like this, all together with a plus or a minus in the middle, or you can split up your two answers. And so that is how you solve equations by taking the square root. Again, it is great if it is in vertex form with parentheses, and it is also great if you do not have an x term. Okay? Thank you for watching. Now, if you will head to the next video, which will teach you how to solve by using the quadratic formula.